Very good. Hope you all enjoyed the keynote. Good morning and welcome to the Ohio Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We're glad that you're joining us for this day of professional learning about family engagement by design. My name is Meredith Wellman and I will be this session's moderator. This is session 4, Supporting Districts' Collaboration with Families and CBOs, New Evidence-Based Resources. If you have any questions, concerns, or technical issues, please message me privately in the chat. We do have our chat active today. Just a note, if you would like contact hours for this session, a code will be provided at the end of the session, which you should write down so that you can put it in your end of summit survey form. So please be on the lookout for this code as it will only be provided once. To ensure that everyone gets the most out of today, we ask that all participants turn off their webcams and microphones unless you are asked to unmute to ask your question later. So you can use the chat feature and I will pass along your questions at an appropriate time. You can also join our conversation today on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag OHSummit24 to share your thoughts. Our presenters for this session are Dr. Rachel Renbarger and Dr. Felix Fernandez from FHI 360. Dr. Renbarger is an educational researcher at FHI 360, which is a global nonprofit focused on improving human well-being. She was raised in a rural and low-income household, and she obtained her teaching license to serve the students from her hometown. She then earned her PhD in educational psychology from Baylor to study resilience and systemic change. Her current work includes systematic review, meta-analysis, and mixed methods research, along with evaluation, towards the goal of improving public education. She lives in Durham, North Carolina with her family. And we also have here Dr. Fernandez. He's a principal research scientist at FHI 360 and has over 15 years of experience conducting research on educational technologies, dropout prevention, college and career readiness, and family and community collaboration, with a specific focus on underserved communities. He's an expert at translating research findings to practical applications, data visualization, and the design and implementation of rigorous multi-method program evaluations. All right, and now I will pass the mic over to them. Thank you so much for being here today presenting on this content.
Thank you, Meredith. Really happy to be here. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Connected and Engage Family and Community Collaboration Spotlight. We really do appreciate you taking the time to join us and lend your voices to this conversation. We really do want this to be a conversation, so please use the chat. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but we encourage you to also, come off mute, come off speaker during appropriate times. Through our effort and our initiative, we have aimed to better understand the barriers to engaging families in schools, districts in community and family collaboration in authentic and sustainable ways. Our hope is that by sharing district spotlights, policy briefs, that we can highlight what good family and community engagement looks like, and really sort of provide searchable resources that provide actionable guidance. Our goals for today is to provide an overview of our initiative, share strategies and resources from our online guide, and hear your suggestions on how we can share this information both with your districts, other districts, or other audiences. During our time together, we'll tour our site, which we'll provide the link to in a little bit, allowing you time to engage in finding resources for yourself that you might want or need for your work. We ask that throughout the presentation, you actively engage in the chat again. So please type in your questions into the chat box. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak or come off camera. We'd love to hear what you are working on, what resources you use, and what you think of the resources we are sharing. We also want to hear your questions and have reserved time at the end for a Q&A. So the first thing, we'd like to open up to the chat box, or if you'd like to come off mute. What are you hoping to take away from this session? When you selected it, when you joined, what are you hoping to get out of today's little session?
Yeah, we already learned so much if you were in Katie Novak's session just now. Curious what prompted you from that to here. What you take away from hers and you want to expand on maybe here today? We're very interested. We've got Deanne from Westerville. Hi, Deanne. Yeah, let us know. What do you want? What do you need? We've got Linda from Columbus. Tanya, good morning.
I don't know who N Clues is, but hoping to learn more about the overall how to improve our school's family engagement nights. Excellent. Hoping from Dr. Heidi Orfish, hoping to learn some new evidence-based practices and some free resources. Yes, we do have lots of resources, and we're happy to share those.
And
Resources.
they are all free. They will stay free.
Resources for family engagement. Matthew Chavez is hoping to help Texas schools move away from viewing family engagement as attendance-based events to true partnerships and collaboration with families. Yes, I think that was one of the things we learned very early on, and it's why we intentionally go with the term family and community collaboration, not engagement, because it really is a two-way communication that we're seeking. So thank you, Matthew. Yes, excellent.
We will have a ton to is it Sydney? Better outreach. We have a lot on communication. So that's good to know. I'll point to some of that later on.
Excellent. Carolyn is looking to how to begin family engagement work, right? One of the things we learned by talking to districts across the country is that this is a continuum of work. Not everyone is going to be exceeding at every part, and this is something that there are ways to support entry level changing, just conversation. So very exciting. Yes.
This is great. Okay, so you came to the right session. Sounds like you knew what you were getting yourself into.
All right. Suzanne, hoping, as a parent of a disabled student, hoping to learn more about how to best advocate for him and other disabled students, and to have parents more actively engaged in pursuing services, right? I think that's something that we all struggle with, and how best to advocate for our students. And really this begins about having, two-way conversations and having parents have a vote in the decision-making, right? Having their voices heard. So excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And to Ryan's point about how other organizations outside of the district partner with the districts, as Katie mentioned, we need all the help we can get in education. So excited that you're wanting to proactively figure out what that looks like. That's great. Oh, same with Deanne.
I'm going to encourage everyone to remain active in the chat. Keep typing in your questions, your thoughts, or what you're hoping to get out of here. Meredith will be reviewing it, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. Right off the bat, our team recognized that there are many wonderful experts working in family and community collaboration. Our work was never meant to create another framework, as many already existed around what could and should be happening, right? On this slide, you'll see the three foundational frameworks, that we like to call it, that we use to guide our thinking. They include the Family Leadership Design Collaborative that highlights the unique role and strengths of marginalized families, the Dual Capacity Building Framework that describes ideal goals, conditions for success, and outcomes, and Epstein's 6 types of parent involvement that expands what it means for families to engage in their students' education. If you aren't familiar with these, that's okay. We'll provide links to this in both our site, and later on, if you have questions, we can sort of provide you additional resources. But we'd love to know, if you've heard of these frameworks, please let us know in the chat. If you're already using these, if you have resources that you'd like to share or examples, please type them into the chat. If you're using other frameworks that are similar or different, or just your thinking on them, please enter that into the chat. I'm sure everyone would be excited to learn more about that. Right. So right now we'll be diving straight into the process of what came after we examined these foundational frameworks. And so our process for that, if you like step diagrams, you can see here, is our process that we conducted to sort of learn more about family and community collaboration. From the bottom, you can see is our 3 foundational frameworks. Not only did we base our work on those frameworks, we spoke to the leaders, to the developers, to the creators of those frameworks. We talked to those experts about what's crucial research exists in this space and what would be crucial to move forward. From there, we conducted a landscape review. That's our first step. A search of current research in the literature that was based on internet and library searches. These results taught us that there is a large gap between some of the frameworks and best practice and what actually happens in schools, right? That research utilization gap is large, and that is something that is very present in family and community collaboration work. From there, we conducted what we call community conversations for those in the field. Now, those were teachers and admins across the country to understand what key challenges there were to doing best practice work in family and community collaborations. What solutions already exist in overcoming these challenges, and just their general thoughts on the practices. I will note that these community conversations did occur during the COVID hybrid year. And so we were coming off of that, and COVID was a large challenge during many of these conversations. From there, we also conducted interviews with district staff who were not, to learn more. From there, we conducted a national call to identify best practices or exemplar districts. Really to highlight bright spots, districts who were actively attempting to engage with families on multiple fronts. We originally attempted to really find districts who were exceeding, across the board, and we quickly realized that there is no district in the country that is hitting this at all grade levels of parent involvement effectively or strongly, right? There were struggles everyone had. But we hope by lifting up these examples that you can either see yourself in the examples or learn from them. We conducted interviews with families and staff of the schools that we identified as bright spots through in-person visits. And then our final step is really bringing what we've learned today, right? Sharing with others and sharing the resources we've developed. Here's a little bit on the resources we developed. There'll be links to all of these shortly, and Rachel will provide a tour so you can exactly see where they are. But we had multiple audiences in mind when we developed our resources. We had research audiences. So on our site, you'll see that there is a full downloadable paper that contains all of our findings, all of our case studies, all of our documents and paper resources. That's what we call our working paper. That's the document there on the left. But we've also conducted journal manuscripts. You can see it there. We'll provide the link to that. You can find that on our site. We have developed a book chapter that's forthcoming in Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion in Education. We've presented at conferences and had poster sessions at large national conferences. But we've also developed tools or resources directly for practitioners. That includes our webpage, which we hope is easily navigable, searchable, and friendly. It includes district profiles or what we call our spotlights, our case studies. It includes strategy spotlights. So these are smaller documents, 2 pages, that lift up specific strategies that the districts we spoke to found really, really promising. We have an online resource library. We've developed what we call policy briefs. I think many of you will be familiar with many of the challenges faced to active family engagement is sometimes not at a school level or at a teacher level. Is district imposed or system imposed policies, issues that are sometimes above or where you can't respond to. And I think these policy briefs really tackle those. And lastly, we have an online blog where we continually post new information and resources. The last thing we developed was a series of videos that highlight districts that we met and spoke with and their strategies. Here's one example of our video resources, which I'd like to play right now.
School districts can work to ensure that every student and family, no matter who they are, has what they need to succeed. To do this, districts can weave equity into their daily practices through embedding it in strategic plans, creating diverse community partnerships, and working to meet all families' needs.
The district no longer has equity as a separate goal in our strategic plan. It's embedded in all of our goals, so our hiring goals and our educational goals. And as we select new curricula for different classes, equity is embedded in all of that, just like it is in our practices for partnerships.
We are not going to increase equity by being in an office. We're not going to increase equity just by waiting for our families to come to us. We need to mobilize and get out there, knock on doors, provide events, really attract our families to come to us, and we need to go to them as well. To have this relationship, to see what do they need, what is missing, so that they can have an equitable education.
Equity is about filling the gaps. Our organization supports the district by just filling in wherever things are needed.
I think we all care very much about reaching all families. The library has divided the reference staff into 6 specialty teams. So one of them is community needs, one is lifelong learning, one is workforce development. They serve students, but they also serve their whole families, and they try to include parents, grandparents, extended families in a lot of their programming, and they want to make sure that no one gets left behind.
So APAC, the African American Parent Advisory Council, and what it is a parent group. We all can talk in a comfortable setting and talk about, things that's just specific for us, with our students and how to navigate through this education system. It makes me feel that we're important. It makes me feel excited that there's something for us, that we acknowledge that in the past, this group of people, these demographics has not been noticed, have not been offered these type of things, and we know, and now we're going to make that right.
We have a lot of resources in this community, but sometimes when our social workers or our counselors refer parents and families to those different resources, there's challenges like transportation or taking off work. Parents may not be able to take off work for multiple days for multiple appointments.
And so I think having those conversations with families, being honest about what the needs are in the community, will help a district mobilize their resources and allocate them in a very focused and intentional way.
Now we invite you to ask your community, how can your district create equitable opportunities for all students and families?
That's just one of our strategy spotlight videos. We also have videos highlighting each of the district case studies. And so those are open, free to use. We hope that you find them helpful.
Yes, so when we get to the actual website, I want to preface that with, we want to make this to where you know what you need for your district and you know where you're already strong in. And so we organize the website around these 4 opportunities. So Felix mentioned that we talked to a lot of people. We did a lot of research. We looked at the frameworks. And what we found were that these were the sticking points a lot of times, especially in the COVID and post-COVID days. The opportunities to improve this authentic two-way collaboration were around these 4 areas. So I'm going to go through them quickly, and I'm really wanting to know where you think your strength is and where your weakness might be. That will help with a scavenger hunt part later on. So keep that in mind as I go through these. What do you feel like is working and maybe could use a little bit more work? So the first one being fostering collaborative decision-making. What we talked about earlier, everyone in the community is at that decision-making table. It's not a one-way, from the district type of decision-making. It is when people from all different walks of life get to provide their input and insight into the district goals, the community goals. Sharing that power, that can be very hard, but that occurs in this top left quadrant. Next, building trust. So many groups, as we know, have experienced different traumatic experiences, there's been historic racism, all of these big issues that keep people out of the district. And unless the district is creating that welcoming environment, of course, they're not going to enter. And so making sure that the environment wants that authentic collaboration. This goes to the translation that was brought up in the last session. This means that there's space for people to enter and be part of that decision making. So building that trust, building relationships. Bottom left, strengthening commitment and values. And what that means here is you can't just say that you want family engagement, but proving that through many opportunities. So for instance, some districts might say that they want family engagement, but aren't doing those inclusive practices that were mentioned before. They may not be having district policies or communication strategies from everyone that demonstrate that. Maybe some teachers are and some teachers aren't. But if they're doing this well, it means that everyone's job is around family and community collaboration. And this bottom right one, developing capacity and infrastructure. This is a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the district. So it takes money, it takes resources, it takes people in order to keep this work going, right? You need staff positions, for instance, in ESSER. The ESSER funding helped a lot of districts create these positions, but what happens after ESSER? Are they creating funding streams that allow those family and engagement specialists to stay in the district? It's very hard, but it can be strategic and weaving through different title opportunities or thinking about collaborations with other partner organizations to create space or funding. And so we're curious, do you feel like there's one where you're strong and one that you might want to work on? I'm hoping that y'all can put that in the chat. And yes, I do say y'all, I am from Oklahoma. I know the director said it earlier and wasn't sure why he did, but I'm from the South. I'll say y'all. Yeah, let us know where do you feel like you're rocking it and where do you feel like you might improve? You can also come off mute if you would like. Tanya, you make a good point. All areas of continuous growth. Absolutely. It's one of those things where you can always be better, it feels like. That's the perfectionist in me, maybe. But yeah, there's always something to improve on in each of these areas. Ooh, Rochelle, I'm glad to hear that you've got strong work in building trust and commitment and values. That can be one of the hardest that we've seen. Many districts not knowing where to start in building that trust and building relationships. Building trust is an opportunity for Crystal. Needs help with developing capacity and infrastructure in the central office.
Rochelle lifted up collaborative decision making, right? That's often very difficult, especially now with a lot of the politicization and education about how do we provide parents, community members with active voice in positive, constructive ways. It can be very challenging.
Absolutely. We do not have a family engagement staff person, from Suzanne. That can make it very difficult. So that aligns with both capacity, having a person, but strengthening commitment and values, it could be everyone's job, but that means it's really hard to keep the work going if everyone thinks maybe someone else is taking the charge. Ooh, yep. Developing a long-term plan of action is very difficult. That's strategic visioning, especially if it's not one of those years where it's time to do a new one.
I love building leadership to buy in and to want engagement, right? That is And when we talk about building trust and strength and commitment, right, those are all two-way efforts. And so without strong leadership, without strong support, this doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we don't talk about this enough, but a lot of building leadership just want to think about test scores, but of course, family and community collaboration. But that we know from the research, that helps those test scores. So that buy-in is really, you have to be strategic about getting that buy-in. Amazing. Okay, so we have PTOs and PTAs, untapped resource, that we mentioned that in one of these. Very excited to talk about that. Ooh, Matthew, yep. Texas being a very large place can be, and many of them rural, many of them taking hours to get to. I did my PhD in Texas and very familiar with I-35. All right, well, with this, now that you have an idea of where you want to focus your efforts, I'm going to share the site with you and let's get into it so that you can have access. Felix is going to put the link in the chat. I think Meredith already did, but to the site itself, I'm going to go over the main points, the main juicy content that applies to many of the aspects that you mentioned. So this is the main site. We have multiple guides. This far left one is the one that we're going to be talking about today, family and community collaboration. And like Felix said, this is research-based. And so that's what this introduction is. It's saying, we know the research, we have these frameworks, and it also, if you only take one download from this entire site, it's going to be this final report. It basically collates all of the stuff in here, so you have it in one PDF. We have videos throughout. This is just an overview of this one, but in each of these, which are the more exciting ones to me, these are the ones that are around those 4 areas. So we have decision-making, trust, values, and infrastructure. And what we do here on each of these pages, we talk about what it is, what often gets in the way, and then this is the juicy part. This is the part where we wanted to get things that you could just download, take with you to your next meeting, and have a discussion with your team about. So in collaborative decision-making, you have to co-create goals. You have to make sure that you have voting power for family groups. So depending on which strategy you really want to focus on, there are multiple, ideally, resources alongside each of those. But as many of you mentioned, not just one of these is going to work for you, right? There are many issues to work on. And so we have brought this to life with some quotes from different people that might help with those pieces that you're talking about with buy-in, right? This principle might help another principal who doesn't see the value in it. So there are quotes, there are different resources depending on what strategies you want to work on. And then in this collaboration and action section, there are 3 different districts. As Felix mentioned, each of these districts has an overview of their approaches in a video. So you only have 2 minutes while you're eating your lunch. That's where you go. Down here, it says the strategies that they're focusing on. So we have 2-way communication in this Ohio one. So if that's what you're interested in, definitely download this one. Those task forces are those decision-making power structures. So if you're interested in that, you could download this one. We have the PDFs up here and the videos for each of these. We have California and Alabama here too. Different district sizes, different district populations. So each of these district profiles includes that information. So you can say, this is like us, this is not like us. You can get it information to know how closely you might align with that. On these innovative strategies, these are much smaller bite-sized pieces, as Felix mentioned. So we have these along the sides. There are 5 of them. So home visits, listening tours, these are strategies in action. So If you want to incorporate student voice, it's a 2-page PDF that you can look at. We also have videos that are strategies too. So incorporating environments for that building trust component, using data. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but it's really important in this work, especially for that buy-in piece, for communicating how important it is. And so there are videos about that as well. Felix mentioned the policy brief, so those are in the policy solutions. If you happen to know legislators at your local, state, federal level, absolutely send them along. There are 4 of them because we know we can't do this alone, but less important for us today. So 2 more things that I want to mention. We have a blog that we're continuing to update. So we have, for example, just the other day, someone from the Ohio Center wrote a blog on how to measure teachers' efficacy in doing family engagement. So you can find blogs that are just really quick snippets of other helpful resources. And then we also have a resource library. So we have multiple guides, as I mentioned, but they're different things from other websites. I'll say it like that because it includes research papers, but videos and also PDF links, and includes all sorts of resources here so you can filter by things that are of interest to you. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that you can find something that you need. So in the resources on this website, can you find 2?
Second. Hold on. I'm sorry. I did want to share one resource because I know you touched on it shortly, and I think it came up about what people are hoping to learn. And one of them was for starting out. And so in the report that Meredith provided the link to, and it's on our site, for each of our 4 areas, we provide handy checklists to start where you want to begin on each of these areas. So for collaborative decision making, you can see there are some quick and easy things to, well, maybe not quick or easy, depending on which one you tackle. But there are some initial first steps about how you go about doing this in your district. So I just wanted to flag that.
Yep. So we would like to give you 10 minutes to start exploring the website. We know you already have very limited time in your schedule. So this is a scavenger hunt, 10 minutes-ish. And we want to hear what you find, something that you found that works for you in that area of growth that you identified. Anything you want to learn more about, something that you think this group in particular might be interested in. Have at it.
We're also happy if you want to look into more detail of any of the resources we have, we can bring them up on screen and go over those as well.
I just have to unmute and say it is so much. Like I want to just dig deeper and deeper and look at more and more things. This is amazing, and having everything put together in one place. I just can't tell you. I'm very excited to dig deeper and bring this to my team.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a labor of love. We had a lot of fun. A lot of hard times putting all of it together. There's so many great resources all over the web. So if there are others that you use that you think we should add to this, we're also welcome, because we wanted to make it more of a one-stop shop because y'all have limited time in the school. So thank you for that kind word.
Sherry called up the district profiles. You know, I really wish I could give thumbs up to messages. I don't know how to do it in Zoom. Rochelle talked about reviewing the collaborative section on collaboratively definitions with her team, which I think is excellent. Yes, please use these resources to begin conversations to share with your team.
Matthew, you want to come off mute?
Thank you. One of the things that many of our Texas schools, in particular the rural schools who don't receive a lot of funding, that they share with us is that they don't have the funding to provide a dedicated family engagement person within their school district. So it often falls to a campus principal,
Mm-hmm.
possibly a district counselor or a superintendent, especially in those very small rural districts. So I was hoping to be able to find something that would be very helpful in providing some information to those school districts to kind of reassure them that it can be done,
Mm-hmm.
even when your funding and your human resources are lacking.
Yep. Yeah, so there are a few things that I can mention briefly. In our funding policy brief, we talk about how many districts have to braid funding streams. So they'll use a little bit from Title I, a little bit from this, a little bit of that to create those positions. But when they can't create a position, especially in rural, what they can do is have a little bit of funding for a grant writer, or they'll share a grant writer with other districts so that the grant writer who already knows how to do all of the resource finding can help create more resources. So it's not just a superintendent or any sort of district admin's job. So they use a little pot of money over there to get more money, essentially. And that shows up in the Moreno Valley School District profile, especially. So you can see it starts around page 7 of that profile. Another thing that they do in that district, instead of having one, they do have a person dedicated, but they've also started using school-based people to create that work. And those school-based people are families, they're parents, oftentimes, they're caregivers. So they have what are called parent ambassadors that work as those engagement sort of specialists. They're there at pickup and drop off, for instance. They get a small stipend, but it's definitely not enough to cover the work that they're doing. These parent ambassadors get training in these are the things that families need to know about right now. They get training in what communication could and should look like. These parent ambassadors often speak the languages of those schools too. So if there is a translation aspect to that communication. So I definitely would recommend that, because there are many families, as we were talking about earlier, like having that capital, they have a lot of assets to bring, and some of them have that time to stand in the pickup line or go to cafeteria duty and help do that sort of engagement work. So I'd say Moreno Valley is doing that really well as a starting point for thinking about other one person's only job to get that work done.
Yeah, and I'd follow up on that, Rachel. I think we intentionally selected case study sites for our district profiles that would be different. So you can see we go from Moreno Valley, Cleveland Heights, to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right? So there are very different profiles, different schools. And I think that our focus on this is always establishing that this is a continuum and there are entry points for all types of schools and all ways to access this. We are acknowledging, like Rachel's a key passion for her is rural, right? And I think that's an area where we want to begin to dig deeper and like, how do we establish consortium of rural schools? How do we build these partnerships and supports in areas where it is a little bit more remote or difficult to travel or access is a larger issue?
Yep, it's unique in that space. But I feel like a lot of districts are recognizing the need to work with other districts. It's not a competition, but figuring out what works. Suzanne?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live in actually a fairly financially stable suburban school district. So our equity issues are more focused on disability, at least mine are. And so providing services to students in special education through either IEPs or 504s or just simple accommodations that can be made in the classroom. And I think our biggest struggle is trying to convince the district that just throwing money at it doesn't actually solve anything. And so they've created these key communicators where there's a parent representative from each school that meets every other month, and they talk about disability issues going on at the school. They take information back to the school from the district. But what has been frustrating that's come out of that, which is a direct connection to my advocacy groups calling the special education department on their missteps in front of school board meetings that nothing's actually being done. So we sit around and we talk about the issues, but there's no action items. So really trying to convince the district that here are the issues, but just identifying them doesn't solve them, and trying to convince them, trying to move them to see that by creating either a person within the district that is that engagement person, or having some sort of connection with a community group that can help them do that. That's where I'm, hitting a wall, is like, how do we move the district to just not throw money at the problem, but actually create action items and a process and a plan for implementing some of these things.
The thing that comes to mind with that is the Cleveland Heights, University Heights, which Meredith was chatting about in the chat. So it seems like they need a task force, something where there's a structure of there are people that represent the right things, the right groups. There's a timeline. So we're not going to have this task force forever. We're going to have it for 6 months, 18 months, whatever it might be. And these are the action items. So their district was really struggling with equity. And so they had an equity task force, for instance, and they met until they got their goals situated around equity. They met until they had different listening sessions completed. So it was based around actions rather than just chatting for the sake of chatting. And so, yes, it is basically an action team, those task forces that we mentioned in the Cleveland one. So that would be a great model to follow, because I think you're right. I'm glad that they have money to throw. We don't hear about that so often. But the other site that comes to mind with that, Tuscaloosa really focused around a physical space. So around, their resource focused more around literacy. And so they have different organizations focused on literacy within one of the school sites. And so you might have speech learning pathologists with translation services, all talking to each other about what actually is the issue and how do we solve that specific issue. So that co-location of the people who understand the issue, in your case, disability services, that getting professionals who know things to provide more of that authority or expertise to the board might also be helpful.
Susanna, I just want to thank you for sharing that story. I think, that's something we hear a lot of, and it's sort of detrimental to all of our 4 categories, from building trust to sort of authentic engagement. If you're not feeling you're being listened to, you begin to disengage. And I think it's important to lift those instances up. We understand that these schools may not be able to always respond immediately, or they have different demands, but I think one of the issues we found is that when these boards get put together, they often don't have any actual authority, right? And so to the extent which there can be responsibilities or authority given to your committee to say, these are decisions, these are the next steps that need to be taken, one of them needs to be enforced, giving you some of that power back as a group to say these are action steps that need to happen, helps to sort of balance that. But that's always a conversation about how do you establish those types of policies within your district.
Mm-hmm. Sorry you're struggling with that in your district. That is pretty heartbreaking. We do have, I think, about 5 minutes for questions now. These are already seeming like questions, but if there are other questions in the room, we'd love to chat about those too. And we will have our contact information on the next slide in case you want to reach out to us after this. If you have a question tomorrow in the shower, anything like that.
If you have a resource you'd like to share, something you'd like to lift up in a blog to share with other districts, those are things we'd love to hear about.
Not a resource, but perhaps a thought for Suzanne. I wonder if there are other schools in your area that are finding it easier to take action on some similar issues going on, and if people within your school community could have a natural mentor close by to see that there are other ways of handling continuous improvement. That makes sense.
Danny lifts up using action plan formulas, right? Not only saying who's doing it, who's doing what, by when, setting timelines, setting responsible parties.
Oh, I love that, Lena. The family engagement committee with different groups is key. I love when districts are bringing students into the conversation. They know what's going on or what's missing.
Matthew raised up the case studies again. You know, I think we fell in love with each of the districts, schools that we visited. And I think, we lift them up as bright spots because they are. But I think we also equally lifted up the challenges that they were still facing and sort of struggling with in sort of trying to be as realistic as possible about what it means to engage in this effort. So I think you both learned strengths and, as we call them, opportunities where you can improve or look out for.
I'm just looking through the innovative strategies idea, and I just love going through all of the different ones and specifically thinking about the physical spaces to meet family needs. And I'm going to give it a little self plug, but we're presenting this afternoon about our work at Columbus City Schools in Columbus, Ohio, and how we have really aligned a lot of our work with family community places that our families like to go. For instance, COSI, our Center of Science and Industry, and the zoo and Franklin Park Conservatory. And our families have really been responsive because they can attend those as a family at no cost to them. And then we always align it with a literacy strategy. And I work with our early childhood. So it's all early childhood literacy. So when the families come, not only do they get to interact in this collaborative community environment that they may not get to typically go to, like the Columbus Museum of Art, but we also have activities, and then they leave with materials to address early childhood literacy. And again, just trying to really meet those families where they are in places that they want to go to and providing those needs in those environments. So I love seeing that someplace else, that like doing the right thing. We're on the right track. Someone else is seeing it. Our data shows it too.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you everyone for putting in the chat. We hope you really found this helpful. Here's our contact information before I stop sharing. Feel free to take a screenshot, capture it, but you can also reach out through us through our Connected and Engaged site as well. With that, I'll turn it back over to Meredith.
All right, let me switch the spotlights here. And share my screen. Thank you so much, before I share my screen, to Drs. Renbarger and Fernandez for sharing your time and amazing website. It just opens up a world of possibilities when you can see what others have done outside of some of our little bubbles we feel like we're in. We feel like we hear the same examples over and over and the same struggles. So your work really is very impactful, and I know that Ohio and other states represented here will really benefit from this presentation and from digging in deeper to what we just scratched the surface to learn about today.